We're going to be talking about database table diagrams. Our objectives will be first to learn to create database table diagrams by demonstrating the tables that will make up the database for the system being designed and how they are related. We will learn to create tables with fields, primary keys, and foreign keys. We will represent one-to-one, many-to-many, so one-to-one, many-to-many, one-to-many, and generalization relations. We will create tables and fields with primary keys and foreign keys. So we'll create a database table diagram that demonstrates what tables will be needed to store the data for the system being developed. So databases are all about storing the data, and so we will create tables in order to represent what it is that we will be storing. We will want to be able to add fields, primary keys, and foreign keys that will reflect the attributes and relations shown in the class diagram. So we will begin our journey of creating database table diagrams with our already created class diagram. The first kind of relationship we will represent is going to be one-to-one. These use primary keys and foreign keys and relationship lines to correctly demonstrate one-to-one relationships on the database table diagram. We will represent many-to-many relationships. So again, using primary keys, foreign keys, and relationship lines to correctly demonstrate many-to-many relationships. If you have experience with database already, then you'll know that many-to-many is a type of relationship that does not work for database table diagrams. So you will know that there's some steps that you have to take to resolve these. If you don't know that yet, we'll get into it. So the next one would be one-to-many. So again, just using the primary keys and foreign keys and relationships lines to correctly demonstrate those relationships on our table. And then finally, generalization relationships. So these are inheritance. How do we represent inheritance relationships on a database table diagram? So it's these four relationships that we want to see when we finally submit our diagram. We want to see one-to-one, many-to-many, one-to-many, and generalization. And we want to see how do we represent all four of these correctly in our database table diagram. So what is a database table diagram? Database diagrams graphically show the structure of the database. So using database diagrams, you can create and modify tables, columns, relationships, and keys. This is where we put our blueprint for how our database is going to be set up. Before we get started actually creating our database table diagram, we should know some terminology. We've used some of these already, but we will be reviewing them right now. So a table, we will want to know what a table is, a row or record. We'll want to know column or field, primary key, and foreign key. So hopefully all of these are familiar to you, especially table, row, and column. I mean, these are ones that you'll see using the Excel spreadsheets program. Primary key and foreign key you should have learned in your database class, but just we'll be going over that for review. So looking at these two tables, so these are tables, okay? These fields, you can see at the top, it's kind of bold, and they have special names. So we have customer ID, customer name, account name, order ID, title, customer, and price. These are going to be our field names or our columns. You can see that under customer ID, we have a set of numbers. Under customer name, we have a set of names, account, a set of account, and then so on and so forth. The rows are going to be here, we called them rows or records. So we have a row is going to consist of, a piece of information from each of the fields. So we have one customer ID field, one customer name field, and one account number field. So that's going to represent a row or one record in our table. So the last two are primary key and foreign key. And a primary key is going to be a designated column within your table that is unique. So no record can have the same primary key field value. Notice here under customer ID, we have 100, 101, 102. Oftentimes when we are creating a primary key, we create a separate field specifically for the primary key That is unless, of course, something is unique by itself within our table. So a lot of times we might see, something like account number here. Account number, it's not typical that you would see repeating account numbers. So the reason why we want something unique is because we want this field to identify our record. When I call on customer ID 100, I know that I will get the rest of this data associated. So Kara Dowdy and then her account number. So we will always have one primary key per table. A foreign key is going to be a reference to another table's primary key. So here let's take a look at book order table. We have customer, we have book order. We have order ID. This is going to be the primary key. So every primary key is unique here. You can see that 1001 will bring us the information for Dark Tower, 102 customer ID and price. So a primary key is going to, so our primary key right here is going to be unique. But the foreign key, like I mentioned, is going to be our ID that maps us back to another table. And that foreign key is going to connect us so that we can get information about, the record that it points to. So here we have 1001, and then we have the title. So the book that they're ordering is The Dark Tower, and that's our title. Then we have the customer ID. So this is going to be our foreign key. And like I mentioned before, a foreign key is a primary key from another table. So we're just using a 102. So this customer ID has 102 for this particular record, and that maps us back to Rebecca Conant. So here we have Rebecca Conant, her account number, and so this lets us link together book order with a particular customer, and then we still have the rest. We have price here, and so we have that for every single book order now because we have identified that we want this foreign key. Now, anytime a customer purchases a book, we'll be able to link back to who purchased that book, and that's the purpose of a foreign key. So it's the primary key from another table. And these do not need to be unique. So notice we have 102 several times. That means that this particular customer purchased several times a couple of different books. And so these do not need to be unique within another table. So let me rephrase that. A foreign key does not need to be unique when it's being used. So let me rephrase that. A foreign key does not need to be unique. A primary key does. So when the customer ID is used in its table as a primary key, this needs to be unique. There cannot be another 100. But when that foreign key when that primary key is being used as a foreign key, it does not have to be unique. So we can have as many. Rebecca can purchase as many books as she wants. That particular book order would have that primary key and would be able to map us back to this particular table.